You've probably been in a room full of people and felt completely alone. Not physically alone, but emotionally disconnected. You're talking, you're present, you're engaging in the conversation. But something feels off. You're surrounded by others, maybe even people you know, and yet there's this quiet sense of isolation that you can't shake. And it doesn't make sense, because loneliness is supposed to happen when you're by yourself, not when you're with other people. This isn't about social skills or having the wrong friends. It's about a gap that most people don't realize exists. The gap between physical presence and emotional connection. And your brain doesn't treat those two things as interchangeable. You can be surrounded by people and still feel isolated if the type of connection you're experiencing doesn't match what your brain is looking for. Most people assume that loneliness is solved by being around others. If you're lonely, go out. Be social. Spend time with people. But that logic only works if presence equals connection. And it doesn't. You can be in the same space as others, having conversations, participating in activities, and still feel fundamentally alone. Because loneliness isn't about proximity. It's about the quality of the interaction. Research into loneliness and social connection shows that what reduces loneliness isn't the number of people around you or even how much time you spend with them. It's whether you feel seen, understood, or valued in those interactions. If the interaction is surface level, transactional, or performative, it doesn't satisfy the need for connection. It just creates the appearance of it. Let's say you're at a work event or a social gathering. You're talking to people, making small talk, laughing at jokes. From the outside, it looks like you're engaged. But inside, you feel distant. The conversations don't go deeper than pleasantries. No one is really asking about you, and you're not really sharing anything meaningful. You're performing social behavior, but you're not connecting. And when it's over, you feel more alone than you did before. Or think about someone who spends time with a group of friends but feels like they're on the outside. The group is friendly, they include them, there's nothing overtly wrong. But the conversations move quickly, the jokes reference things they weren't part of, and they never quite feel like they're fully in sync with everyone else. They're present, but they're not connected. And that lack of connection registers as loneliness, even though they're not isolated. This is where the uncomfortable part comes in. Sometimes the loneliness you feel around people is worse than the loneliness you feel when you're alone. Because when you're alone, the isolation makes sense. But when you're with others and still feel lonely, it creates confusion. You start wondering if something is wrong with you. If you're not social enough, not interesting enough, not doing it right. But that's not what's happening. Studies on social belonging suggest that people need more than just interaction. They need interactions where they feel like they matter, where they can be themselves, where there's mutual understanding or shared vulnerability. Without those elements, social engagement can feel hollow. You're going through the motions, but the deeper need for connection isn't being met. There's also the issue of emotional labor. When you're around people, especially in groups or public settings, you're often managing how you present yourself. You're monitoring your behavior, adjusting your tone, deciding what to share and what to hold back. That management takes energy. And it creates distance between who you are and how you're showing up. Even if the people around you are kind and welcoming, that distance can feel isolating. Research into authentic self-expression shows that people feel more connected when they can interact without constantly self-monitoring. When you're in a space where you have to perform or filter yourself, connection becomes harder. Not impossible, but harder. Because part of you is focused on managing the interaction rather than experiencing it. Here's the thing that makes this so difficult. You can't always control whether an interaction will feel connecting or not. You can be in the same situation with the same people on different days and have completely different experiences. Sometimes the conditions are right for real connection. Sometimes they're not. And when they're not, being around people doesn't fix loneliness. It just highlights it. There's also the fact that loneliness isn't always about lacking connection. Sometimes it's about lacking the right kind of connection. You might have people in your life who care about you, who you spend time with regularly, but if those relationships don't meet a specific emotional need, you can still feel lonely. Not because the relationships are bad, but because they're not addressing what you're looking for in that moment. This doesn't mean your relationships are insufficient or that you need different people. It just means that loneliness is more nuanced than presence versus absence. It's about alignment between what you need emotionally and what the interaction is providing. And that alignment doesn't happen automatically just because people are around. The reason this feels so isolating is that it's hard to explain. If you tell someone you're lonely, they might point out that you're always with people, that you have friends, that you're not alone. And from the outside, that's true. But the loneliness isn't about being alone. It's about feeling disconnected even when you're not. And that's a different problem entirely. People often respond to this type of loneliness by seeking more social interaction. They go out more, they say yes to more invitations, they try to fill their time with people. But if the interactions aren't meeting the underlying need for genuine connection, the loneliness persists. You end up more exhausted and still just as lonely. Because the issue wasn't a lack of people. It was a lack of connection. This doesn't mean connection is impossible or that every interaction has to be deeply meaningful. It just means that physical presence and emotional connection are not the same thing. And when you feel lonely around people, it's not a failure on your part. It's a signal that the type of interaction you're having isn't addressing the needs your brain is trying to meet. And recognizing that can at least make the loneliness less confusing, even if it doesn't make it go away.